It's good to be back. You missed me. I miss you too. Blow something up. I already did that. I'm not saying that the world is enjoying its longest period of uninterrupted peace in years because of me. I'm not saying that from the ashes of captivity never has a greater phoenix metaphor been personified in human history. I'm not saying that Uncle Sam can kick back on a lawn chair, sipping on an iced tea, because I haven't come across anyone who's man enough to go toe-to-toe with me on my best day. Please, it's not about me. It's not about you. It's not even about us. It's about legacy. It's about what we choose to leave behind for future generations. And that's why, for the next year, and for the first time since 1974, the best and brightest men and women of nations and corporations the world over will pool their resources, share their collective vision to leave behind a brighter future. It's not about us. Therefore, what I'm saying, if I'm saying anything, is welcome back to the Stark Expo.
Kickoff of the Stark Expo, where Tony Stark has just walked off stage. Don't worry if you can't make it down here tonight, because this expo goes on all year long. And I'm going to be here checking out all the attractions and the pavilions and the inventions from all around.
If you're Tony Stark hosting your own expo, a huge production, outrageous budget, and big personality as a keynote speaker is entirely expected. Attractions, autograph sessions, celebrity sightings, that's all part of the experience. While you may not see Iron Man at an industry event, you may very well see actual celebrities from this universe on stage welcoming attendees. Those appearances pay into the six figures depending on the profile of the celebrity. But some industry events are different. They're typically smaller and are focused on learning, networking, and community. These events abstain from keynotes while attendees imbibe peer learning. As in-person industry events make a comeback, you may find yourself wondering which type to attend. Sarah Hatter, Senior Director of Community and Events at PartnerHero, has been hosting live events in multiple countries for over a decade, and she joins Next in Queue to share her thoughts about how to evaluate all the events vying for our attention and money. This week we discuss the importance of community, evaluating events, considerations for event attendees, the impact of celebrity speakers, different types of conferences, content and experiences at events, and upcoming Elevate CX events. Let's get to it.
Welcome to Next in Queue, the podcast for contact center and customer experience professionals. Next in Queue is brought to you by Happy 2 Vision. Eliminate blind spots and see right through every conversation with Happy 2 Vision. Learn more at happitu.com. Now, here's your host, Rob Dwyer.
Sarah Hatter, you are next in queue. Thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm excited. That was such an intense countdown, because usually it's like, 3, 200, whatever. This was like, I feel like I was cutting in a movie, like 5, 4, like launching a space shuttle. So this better be good with all that anticipation is what I'm saying.
I mean, we're going to turn this into a movie, but before we got started, you already judged me, kind of made fun of past decisions that I've made in my life.
God, I wish we were recording during that moment so other people could understand my shock. But listen, I don't want to insult our listeners too, who might also have to use Microsoft Teams in their workplace. If that's you, I'm very sorry. I was just telling Rob how sorry I was that he had to endure that. Right? I was very compassionate.
You were being
You're
being very judgmental. I feel like you're being very judgmental, and that's okay.
It's okay
because it just is. I need to introduce you, though. I mean, we got the name, but you go by the CX Maven. You are the founder of Elevate CX, and what was it, 6 or 7 months ago? You joined forces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was like Wonder Powers Unite or something like that, and now you're with PartnerHero, Senior Director of Community and Events with them. Not the first person from PartnerHero to be on this show. So welcome. That's who you are.
So Elevate CX was acquired by PartnerHero in September 2023. Seems like an lifetime ago already, about 6 months, which is great. You know, we were at the, I think, 11-year mark, 12-year mark, just wrapped our 42nd event. So it was time to move onward and upward into bigger things. So thank you. Yeah, we've done so many events all over the world. I mean, truly, withstood COVID. Our community kind of hung in there for that. We got back to doing in-person events in 2022. And here we are again, still at it.
I'd like to hear when the idea of community really kind of resonated with you and made you want to do something around that.
That is a very interesting question, because it was not the reason we started Elevate CX. It was not the reason why we started our events. Community didn't come for quite a while. Because even when we started in October 2012. I had a partner at the time, User Voice. We were doing this conference together called User Comp. And the idea was, let's get our friends together who do support in a room and empower them and make them feel good about their jobs and make them understand how important their jobs are. And, you know, we were just like, let's just do it for a day and see what happens. It'll be fun. It'll get everyone together. By the end of that first day, we knew that we were going to do more events, which was really not in my agenda. I was a consultant. I was traveling the world. I had 6 or 7 employees at the time. We were doing customer experience consulting for SaaS companies. So this was it wasn't even a side hustle like the events thing. It was just sort of a thing that I happened to be good at doing. I happened to be good at presenting and producing events. So why not, right? We did our second event, I think, in New York in 2013. And then we just kept doing them. And along the way, somehow, probably around the 2014, 2015 mark, we realized that we had this really incredibly robust Slack channel or Slack community. Every time someone would buy a ticket to an event, we'd throw them in the Slack community, say, this is where we're going to talk about things. So we kind of by accident created what this community was about. The flip side of that is, even in my career, I was realizing I was going in and consulting at large scale companies, airlines and banks and giant entertainment industries. And every single time I'd go in and do these like pep talks with their support teams or their customer experience teams, and everyone just felt so downtrodden. Everyone just felt so unseen and so looked over. So to have someone come in and say, hey, you're important. You're actually like the nucleus of this company and you can do great things and, you know, you're empowered and I have vision for you. I think it just changed a lot of people's perception about their roles in that frontline service role. And we had the power to do that back then. I mean, this is 10 years ago in the SaaS industry, in the startup industry. We were breaking every rules, disrupting everything. And, you know, Jeannie Bliss is great, but she's great for her niche. And this wasn't it. So we really, soon after, I think, our 3rd or 4th year doing events, we realized like we can really harness and tap into the community of attendees that we have, not just for future speakers and classes and master classes, but to connect people, how important that is. I mean, that's really the big function of community, is to connect and support each other, to say, I see you, you're like me, I know your job, I can help you, to say, you know, we need to hire in someone to do this job and they want me to put it on Indeed and we're just going to get thousands of applicants for people who aren't qualified. Well, here's 3,000 people who are qualified. Let's start there. So yeah, I mean, it's now it's great. We're in, 15 years since we started, something like that, since I started working in consulting and CX. And there are so many communities out there for people. It's niche communities too, which is great for D2C markets or B2C, or the people that are working, you know, like with GD Bliss and call centers and BPO markets and all that stuff. So it's been great to see how communities have evolved in the past few years. But I also have to be really transparent and grateful just to say that our attendees of our events built that community just by being present, being there, stating their needs and showing up for each other. I really wasn't a giant part of that other than just giving them a place to be and helping kind of fence it in a little bit, right?
I wonder if you can tell me about kind of the journey of how the events have changed over time. I mean, you've been doing events for more than a decade now. Tell me about that.
Well, our events were always very simplified. And the first event that we ever did was really coming off the heels of me doing probably 18 months to 2 years of speaking gigs as someone who would speak at tech events all over the world. I was just back to back to back. I think in 1 year alone, I was at 30 events. Most of the time, I was the only person talking about customer support or customer experience. Most of the time, I was the only person in the room who was interested in that. And probably 60% of the time, I was the only female speaker. Sometimes I was the only female in the entire room, and that was Wild West too. You know, we forget that how like close we are to those times, if you will. So I went into starting our event saying, I'm doing everything differently than what I've been experiencing. There's not going to be any, you know, greasy pizza boxes and tote bags and shitty t-shirts. And we're not doing any of that stuff. We're really going to focus on comprehensive, short, tactical talks, like TED style, right? Real quick, on and off the stage. And my big thing, I think I have usually have very simple rules about these events, but the one that I have absolutely never, ever buckled on is no panels, no Q&A. We don't release the microphone wild to the audience for a lot of reasons. But that doesn't mean that we don't want people to talk about, and you know, the talks that are on stage and ask questions and get to know people. So we facilitate that by having a lot of social time. When we started these events, we were going all out. We were 400 people. You know, and then I think we got to a point where one time we had an event with 600 people in Portland. One day, 20 speakers in single track. Nuts, right? This is just bonkers to even look back and think about it. And I think it was one of those events, or maybe an event in San Francisco where we had multi-tracks, where we just had attendees say, it's getting too big. It's getting too hard to meet people. It's too hard to talk to people. And we were also in this really weird, not competition, but space with our sponsors where they were going to like CCW events. Like you and I have talked about those events. Those events are massive and those events are just overwhelming. And their teams are coming back saying, we didn't talk to a single person. We spent $30,000 to sponsor one of the events to have a booth. We didn't get to talk to a single person. So sponsors were starting to look for smaller events. So I think right before 2020, maybe in like 2018 or 2017, we capped our audience at 200. We moved to a 2-day schedule so that we weren't exhausting people with how much, you know, we were throwing at them. And from that, we really were able to open up the schedule a lot more, to have more of that social time, more of the downtime, to have less rigid schedule. I look back on those first events that we were doing, and I don't know, I was a lot younger then. I think that's the only answer for why I was able to do it. Have 20 speakers on stage from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Like, that's nuts. Don't do that if you're thinking about starting an event. But yeah, we just decided let's go really simple. And there's been a couple events that we've done. We did an event in Sydney and a couple events in London too, where we even capped it at 100 people. And it's just a different vibe. The smaller the groups, I think the more people actually meet each other. Sponsors are getting really great one-on-one relational time. And for our sponsors too, you know, they're not just coming to our events to sell product. They're coming to our events to build product, to ask the people who are actually on the front lines, who are doing these jobs, what is it you need? And you don't get to have that tension in conversation with people when you're just at a booth kind of slinging business cards. So, yeah. I mean, the changes, you're right. It's been 10 years. I could go on and on and on about things that have changed, but I think we're really at a really nice point right now, just saying like our prioritization is great content on stage from people that you recognize, people that you know, people that you trust, but also a lot of really curated social time for you to just sit and talk to people, get to know them, build relationships in person.
You brought up something that I want to really kind of dig into, and that is there are lots of events, right? And events are coming back strong. They're trying to. They're trying to. Yeah. Whether you call this post-pandemic or just post, like we're just in a different space now. They are absolutely trying to come back. And there are so many options available to people now, I would say maybe more than ever. So I'm wondering, right, most companies have, number one, they definitely have a limited calendar. They probably have a limited budget, and they have certain goals, whether I'm attending or exhibiting, sponsoring. I wonder, like, what are some of the things that you would encourage people to use to evaluate an event in trying to figure out, like, do I go to this one? Do I go to that one? Do I go over here? Do I go over there? What are some of the things that you think are important? You've been to tons of events as a speaker, running an event, etc. So what do I do?
I think the number one thing is figure out what is your goal going to these events. Is your goal to meet other people who do your job and to learn from them and to make those connections? Is your job your own career advancement? Is your job to come back to your team saying, I learned some amazing stuff, we're going to start implementing whatever it is? Sometimes you'll find, I know we do on our website, there's little letters that people write, like convince your boss to send you to this. But you need to do that work on your own. What are you going to this event for? If your company's paying for it, look, I'm a huge advocate of just like taking the money and run, right? If they're going to send you somewhere, like buy a ticket, go. If you want to go to Vegas, right? But when it comes down to like what these events are about, they're all so different. And you and I know, like, there's a lot of events that are just really, no one cares about the program. No one's there for the talks. No one's there to see who's on stage. Doesn't matter. It's just like, they want to go, like South by Southwest is a really good example of that. Very, very, very few people that go to South by Southwest are planning in advance what they're going to go see and what they're going to do. It's so much like you're in the tidal wave of it when you're there, and you're really there for the experience. With larger events, I think you have more leeway for that. With smaller events, you've got to think about the price point. You've got to think about what the schedule is, who's going to speak, what the topics are, and how, if any of those topics are really relevant to bring you home to your team. And from an event producer standpoint, you know, I can say for myself, we think very deeply about how to present this information to you. How do we get people on stage who are not repeating the same thing over and over and over? You know, I think that even like 5-6 years ago, we got to an inflection point where I told people, like, we're not talking about getting a seat at the table anymore. We're already at the table. Like, I'm sick of hearing it. We need to act like we're at the table. We need to act like we own the table. Let's level up. And that was also at a great time when our audience was moving up in their career and leaving some of that icy behavior behind, or those like easy touch points behind. So now we're seeing people talk a lot more about mental health at the workplace. We're seeing people talk about how COVID and the pandemic, especially being on the front lines and support, affected our jobs, how AI is affecting our jobs. Heavy topics, not just, here's a great way to create a tagging taxonomy. Like, that's not what we do. If that is where you are in your career, you need to find a conference that offers you that kind of content, like really good career development for someone who's an independent contributor now who wants to be a manager for the first time. We're a little bit beyond that kind of stuff, but that is great for you to know whether that's what you're looking for, I think. The worst thing, I think, for me is to go to an event or to get excited about an event and it's just sort of like, This is just a dumb event. I'll give you an example of this, and this is so dorky, but you're a dork, so you'll love it. I went to this event one time at the Morgan Library. It was Tolkien week, and as you can tell from all my accoutrement here, like, I'm a big fan of the professor's work. So I had gone to this event where it promised, a couple of speakers who had written books about the writings of Lord of the Rings, etc. And it didn't end up being that. It ended up being a bunch of dorks in a room together reading somebody else's essay about Tolkien, right? And when you get to that point where you're just like, I could have done this better. I have more knowledge, or I know more about this. It's just so frustrating to not have that need met that you're really excited about. And I think sometimes we get stuck as event producers. We get really stuck on the flash of things, the flashy sponsor, or the flashy party, or the flashy speaker, the keynote speaker, or whomever it might be, without thinking what are they going to say on stage? I've certainly done that. We've had people go on stage and say stuff that I'm like, that's not good at all. That's a really dumb way to look at the world, but go you. So I think it's really important, for attendees as well to be in charge of their destiny, if you will, at these events. Who are the speakers? How are they relevant to me and my career? How are they going to be relevant to my team? And what am I going to get out of this? I think that's the best way to really find something that fits for you.
You were talking about that Tolkien event, and it reminded me of this story I saw about this Willy Wonka event that got put on that made headlines.
The best thing that's happened in events in 2024. That entire event, and I was a deep diver into because I'm like, well, how did this happen? How did this happen? Right? That whole event was created by AI. Every single thing, every single bit of it was AI, which to me was fascinating. But you would have been completely disappointed if you brought your kids to that event.
Yeah, a beautiful disaster is what that was.
Yeah. I mean, I've been at events before that promised to be, a top tier tech event of the century, and had 12 people in a room to watch me speak. Not even 12 people who wanted to watch me speak, just 12 people. Right. So, it's hard. I understand that it's hard, but I also think having an ethos about what work you're putting out into the world, which I certainly do, I am very opinionated about the work I put out into the world, really helps create something that is going to speak to the most amount of people. That's the goal. Speaking of speakers, I want to talk about speakers for a moment. In particular, keynotes, right? Headliners. Yeah. How should I, as a potential attendee or vendor, look at big names that everyone has heard of being at an event? What does that mean for me? Does that mean there's going to be a lot of people there? I'm going to get a lot of business as a vendor? Are you talking about celebrity speakers? Or do you just mean
maybe
headliners?
Maybe.
Maybe. Gosh, you are just making me go hot take express on this, aren't you? 6 or 7 years ago, first of all, I hate to break it to you, but 2019 was 5 years ago.
So it was.
It really was. So when I say 6 or 7 years ago, I'm not talking about 2013. Okay, right. I'm talking about 2018. It might feel like it. Yeah. It might feel like it, but I'm just giving you contextually where we were in time. I had spoken at an event with the CEO of HubSpot, and he was fantastic. I met him and his wife, and he said, we're actually doing an event. Do you want to come? Martha Stewart speaking. And I remember thinking, what? Isn't she in jail? Thinking in my head, what? And also, I don't know marketing very much, so I'm just sort of why is Martha Stewart talking about marketing? But then I was like, maybe Martha Stewart learned marketing in jail, and this is what she's going to revamp her career. Maybe she's involved with HubSpot to make it happen, right? No, she wasn't. She was just on a roster. And these companies reach out to every single giant company that has an in-house event or that sponsors events and say, here's our list of potential speakers. Are you interested? And they pick one and then they market it. Come see Tom Brady talk about inbound marketing at HubSpot. Like, what does Tom Brady know about inbound marketing at HubSpot? He doesn't. But it gets people in the room and it ties him to that brand, right? And then whatever money is spent on him, which I'm guessing is in the multiple six figures, right? Same with Martha, probably. That is counted as a loss at the end of the year for that company on their tax returns. So it's huge benefit for them to spend that money to get a celebrity and then get the buzz about the celebrity's going to be here and then whatever. And I think it's just, it depends on what your goal is at the end of the day, right? I would never go to an event like that because that's not my goal. If I'm going to spend time to go to an event, especially related to my work, I need to learn something. I need to hear from an expert, someone who's done my job, someone whose job I want to do. I don't want to do Tom Brady's job. I have no interest in his job, right? So I can't be like chasing him around. So I think that at the end of the day, when you're making decisions like this to say, I'm going to have a celebrity speaker, I'm going to have like this important person, I'm going to give them a keynote spot, and I'm going to use them as my advertising to get attention on my event, you're diluting everything else about your event. You're diluting the experience that people are going to have. You're devaluing every other event out there in the same category as well, because you're drawing eyes away from that just because people want to go see your celebrity. So, and I'm fine. It's not a competitive thing. It's just sort of like it's not, you're not getting out of it at the end of the day what you want to get out of it, other than a lot of eyeballs from people who aren't going to buy your product at the end of the day, right? I don't know. It sucks. I also don't believe in keynotes as a thing. We don't do them at our events. Everybody in the room is at the same place. Everyone's the same level. Everyone's the same human that comes in there. We have sponsors aren't, delegated to some closet with like in booth land. We have that sponsors in the room with us. Every attendee's in the room with us. Speakers sit at tables with our attendees until it's their time on stage. They're accessible. And I think that is the difference between a community event, an event where people are peers and people are there to learn from their peers, and an event that's maybe just a little bit more fun to spend your company's money on.
One could argue that today Martha Stewart knows a little bit about branding. Marketing, I don't know, but yes, she certainly has figured out how to rebrand
She's
herself.
Figured it out.
So in 2024, perhaps she might be better equipped to deliver a message on marketing. I don't know.
Who knows? I'd rather see Snoop Dogg. I would rather see Snoop Dogg. I got to be honest with you. Like, that's one of the ones that I would pay money to go to. I mean, right?
Why separate them? I mean, if you got the money, just get them both on stage.
You're already getting the tax break. Just get them both, right?
Absolutely. So that's interesting. And I think people who have been to trade shows, maybe that's where we need to talk a little bit about. You talked about how your event is set up, but I think it's worth spending a little bit of time for people who maybe have never been to like a trade show or an expo to talk about how they usually go and what they're usually like and how the floor is usually set up. Can you set that stage for us?
Let's do that. You can jump in here too and share some of your experiences. So
I can.
If something has the word expo in the title, I'm a hard no. I don't want to be around that many people. I don't want to stand in line for food. I'm not interested. Right. And this gets back to like my age. I'm in my 40s. I'm over that kind of thing. If there's a VIP line, yes, buying it. So an expo is just like that Wild West experience that we talked about. If they're using that means it's multiple rooms, multiple tracks, a shit ton of people, mostly selling you stuff. And they're going to pull out all the stops because they are charging for an event that size in Las Vegas, Orlando, Los Angeles, New York. which is our prime event centers for the big ones, minimum probably 50 grand. So that company isn't just spending 50 grand on sponsorship. They're spending 50 grand on their booth space and then probably another 15 to 20 grand on their gimmick. Therapy puppies, hot dog cart, massages, right? Weird, cool tech with the goggles that you put on and you touch things in the air. This is what they do. And so the whole point is to just wow people. And then, you go in, there's usually like a full day where it's just an expo day of all the sponsor booths. And you get your tote bag and you're just putting shit in your tote bag as you walk through, right? And usually every single person wants your email address. Every single person wants your job title. And you go back to your hotel and you just have automated emails from all these people, right? They don't remember you and you don't remember them, but it's just spray and pray. That's the goal. Now, content at these is really iffy, depending on, again, whether they have like a celebrity or top tier speaker or something like that. But usually you're going to get a schedule in advance that you have to go through like you are planning a family trip to Disney World. And it is, you got to plug in your lunch breaks. You got to find a time to nap because it's a lot. You're on your feet. Shop Talk is happening right now as we are talking about this. And I'm already like muted every hashtag. I don't want to know. Right? Yeah, it's like, these are big events. And the goal of these events is actually not content. It's not to show an amazing speaker on stage that inspires you and makes you think differently about your processes. The whole point of an expo event or a trade show event, as they used to be called, is to sell you stuff. That's all it is. They make a deal with their sponsors. We'll get people in the room for you to sell to. So that's that. A different type of conference, I can use Elevate as an example because I think that's a little bit more, we're a little bit more seeing more of these pop up. We have a peer-to-peer conference, which is that concept I told you before of like speakers, sponsors, attendees, everybody in the room. We are peers. There's no one above us. There's no one below. There's no hierarchy. There's no popularity. Everybody is there for the same reason. And our sponsors have a lot more freedom to talk to people, to meet people, to build those relationships, and to be a little bit less salesy, right? They don't want to just overtly sell. They want to listen and learn. That's the whole point of it. We don't have celebrity speakers. We don't pay people to speak. We don't even cover their travel because companies should be using this as part of their marketing budget to send people to these conferences. It is for a company of any size, a huge marketing cachet for you to say, our head of support is so good at customer support that they instruct and teach other people how to do support at these conferences. That is great for marketing. So if it costs your marketing team $1,000 for you to travel somewhere and be on stage for 20 minutes, it's a good investment for them. But that said, I think small events are typically more community oriented. Sometimes you'll find events that are like thematic, like our women's event that is just for women in CX. We have like a real niche kind of theme to that. Whereas other events like our Denver event coming up in September is 200 people, and it's really focused on directors, managers, leaders, that kind of thing. Support Driven's leadership event in March. They have another one coming up in October. It's the same concept of like, we have a niche community here coming together, small, not small people, cut that out. Small amounts of people coming together to have a relational communal experience. That's important. And for us, the focus is really on education. The focus is on anything that you can take out from Friday afternoon, Thursday afternoon. You can take it back to your office on Monday and start implementing what you've learned. Or, just realize you need to burn everything down. Which is always, I feel like that happens to at least one person in the room every time they come to Elevate, is they're like, oh my God, everything is wrong. So yeah, there's a lot in between. There's a lot of stuff that's like E-Tail West was another one that just happened to recently, I think last week or something, that is kind of one of those hybrid events where it has an expo, but it also has content. And this is where it comes down to the responsibility of that attendee to really figure out, what is it I'm looking for? What is what I want? Maybe I do need to just learn all the tools. Maybe I need to figure out what's up and coming. Maybe I do need to figure out how to implement AI and which one's right for me. So I should go into a room where there's 20 people building AI chatbots and figure out like which one works. If that's what you need, then that's an important place for you to be in your career.
I think you just came up with an idea for an event for small people with unusually large feet. That seems like an event that...
Small people. Yeah.
Yeah. Small people, unusually
Small
large
people
feet, circle doors, something like that.
But is it unusually large feet for small people, or is it globally these feet are unusually large, even if you're a small person? See, you gotta figure out what you're looking for there, right?
That's a good question. I think if you're a small person with unusually large feet and you have a door that is circular,
yeah,
I think you qualify for the event.
Makes sense. And yeah.
The details beyond that are probably not terribly important. I want to tell you, I've been to some events, just to add on to some of the things that you're talking about, both as an attendee, as a vendor with a booth. And there is certainly an element of like scanning badges so you get contact information and people not really ready to have a conversation with you. It's just maybe I'm here because I have to go to X, Y, and Z booths because I've got this little card that gets me around to all of the booths so I can win a prize. But I'm not actually engaged with anyone at the booth. Like, I'm not paying attention to your brand or your solution or whatever you have to offer. Like, I just want, validate my parking, please, so I can move on. It's that kind of interaction.
Or like the one that, what was it? It went viral last year that they had hot dogs at their booth, but you had to fill out a whole form to get a hot dog. I would have burned it down. Like, truly.
I don't know. Would I have burned it down or potentially provided false information? I don't know. I'm not sure, but here's what I'm going to say. Yeah. Some of the things you're talking about at some of these events, it sounds really cool, right? I mean, hot dogs and goggles and back massages, like all of these are good things. The question is,
keep in mind if you want
my purpose, is that what I'm spending my money on or my company's money on? And does it make sense?
That's where I was going to say when I was like feverishly interrupting you. Yes, that's the thing. Go ahead right now and look at the prices for some of these events, these expos that are going on. Some of them could be $3,000 for an attendee. $3,000 for an attendee is ridiculous. And unfortunately, tech conferences set that tone 10, 15 years ago because they were marketing to founders and startup leaders and people who had been invested in, who had other people's money to burn. So we set that standard. And when we started doing Elevate, the very first thing that I said at the time when we were pricing it, we were like, we didn't know what we were doing, but I absolutely knew that support teams did not have budgets. I absolutely knew that they were not going to have budgets for a $1,700 ticket for an event, especially a one-day event, which we were one day at that back then. So that's another really important function of sponsors, is that sponsors understand with their sponsorship of our event, they are paying for that event for us so that we can subsidize the cost to our attendees and get more people in the room. Think about like when you see all those expo booths and you see all the ticket costs, where's that money going? Our sponsors know transparently that they are a part of subsidizing our event for teams that are underfunded, underappreciated, underseen, all that stuff. Their education budget might be $500 per year. And this might be, might not have a travel budget. They might be paying for travel out of pocket, right? So, I don't know. I mean, I look at some of those large events and I look at the prices and I just think that you are really creating a funnel of the same type of attendee, right? You are actually like matching yourself to a very particular type of attendee at that price point. So that's less inclusive than you think it might be. in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I think everyone needs to consider. I mean, there are lots of choices out there. I'm not going to say that any particular choice is a bad choice. I'll leave that up to everyone to make their own decision. But I do think it's worth having a true understanding of what the purpose of an event is, what value you get for your money, and what you can understand by looking from the outside. And you've given us some great insight into that so that people can decide, like, yeah, I want to go to this because I'm going to get to do cool things, and maybe I won't learn anything, but I'm really excited
Right.
about
Again, if
putting
your
on
company's paying for
VR goggles and
it.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm down for that. I think that it again just it's about what you need and it's about what you're looking for. So be thoughtful of that. And there are a ton of events out there. There used to not be, and now there are. There's a lot to choose from. So you got to do your research.
Well, we would be remiss if we didn't tell people when Elevate CX, and you actually have more than one event. So can you just quickly run through the events for 2024, when they are,
Yes.
where they are, and how people can find them?
So we have 3 events coming up this year, which is typically what we do, 2 to 3 events per year. Our first event, May 31st and June 1st, is our Women in CX event, and that's in Austin, Texas. If you go to elevatecx.co, you can see all of our events listed there. The Elevate Women event is, I think, a 5th time we've done Elevate Women, which we started back in 2018. Very excited for it. It's just a different tone, different vibe, really focused on personal and career development for women who work in CX. And I want to be clear too, that doesn't just mean people who do customer support. That could mean someone on a sales team who works for a product, works on a product that's specific to CX teams. It could be someone in marketing for CX teams, learning, who the community is and what their needs are. Or it could be someone who is managing or indirectly managing a group of people who do customer support or success. So it's pretty broad, I think. And then in September 26th and 27th, we have Elevate CX, which is in Denver. It's our flagship event, 200 people, 2 days. This time we're doing about 15 speakers and a great workshop, which we've had a lot of success with. Suneet Bhatt is running his amazing personal journey mapping workshop, which we love to do because we also know, just given our community and given our typical attendee, they are people who are looking for ways to improve themselves so that they can improve the lives of other people on their teams and in their families. So his workshop has just been instrumental in helping people do that. Runs the cohort throughout the year through Elevate community. So if you aren't able to go to that event, I highly suggest that you check out our Slack community so you can be involved in that. But yeah, with our 3rd event is actually in London. We've unfortunately had to postpone it because one of our amazing sponsors was recently acquired by Zendesk, which is all the rage these days. So we're really hoping that we can push that out to the fall. Unfortunately, I'm excited to get back to London. I know the CX scene is different there than it is here, but it's a really untapped market as far as like the kind of social events that we produce. So I'm excited to get back and try that, hopefully in the fall. But please do check out elevatecx.co. And I always encourage people to apply to speak if they're interested in being on stage. If they've never been on stage, if they have a great story to tell, this is the perfect audience for that, really. This is an audience full of people who are highly empathetic and sensitive and thoughtful, and above all, understand that humanity comes first. So it's a really, really, really great environment to be on stage for the first time.
But my hot dog booth is not welcome. Is that accurate?
No, I don't know. We always feed people at these events. That's where like most of my money goes to feeding people, right? And so I'm very proud of that because we have really good meals and it's really great. And we are working on getting a giant group reservation for Casa Bonita in Denver. So first come, first serve on that for our attendees. But yeah, we have really good food, so don't worry about that. I think the last event that we did, we even had mini corn dogs, which I think are superior to hot dogs. So
Oh,
there you go.
are superior.
Yeah.
I am, and now I just need to go.
Oh, it was
Sarah,
fantastic. I have
thank
to
you so
shout out
much.
this hotel. The hotel, and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you up, but I want to shout out this hotel in San Diego that we were at in Mission Bay. They had not just a corn dog bar, but individual dips that were custom for our group, and this was just for a snack. So I'm just saying, we go hardcore at Elevate. Come for the talk, stay for the corn dogs.
Hardcore into the mini corn dogs. I love it. Sarah Hatter, thank you so much for being on
Thank
Next
you
in
for having
Queue.
me.
Everybody go check out Sarah on LinkedIn. Go check out Elevate CX. Hop into the Slack community and tell her I sent you.
Next in Queue is brought to you by Happy To and is produced by me, Rob Dwyer. If you enjoy this podcast, please by all means subscribe and or rate this podcast in iTunes or your favorite podcast app. But more importantly, please tell just one person about this podcast. Word of mouth is the best way for people to discover new content. As always, thanks for listening.